Hi, I'm the Board Game Bandit, and this is Next Step Gaming, where we take you from gateway to gamer. And today, we're going to be taking a look at my favorite game of all time, Dominion. Specifically, we're going to be looking at the base set. The base set of Dominion has 25 cards, and you'll choose 10 of them to form your game. And that's one of the best things about Dominion, the sheer replayability of it. With 25 cards and choosing 10, there are over 1 million different games that'll really feel different. Whether or not the village or the market our card is in is going to make a big difference, and I love that about the game. It's also an engine building game, one where you're not scoring points right away, and at some point you have to stop playing the game one way and transition to a new strategy where you actually start getting points. Because the victory cards go into your hand, if you're scoring points right away, you're going to be slowed down significantly and you're actually going to lose. So there's a lot of finesse involved in Dominion where you actually have to play the game in two halves. That's a very interesting aspect, and we'll look at some recommendations based on it. For me, Dominion is the perfect deck building game. Many games have come since then. It actually invented the mechanic overall, and each game tries to defeat Dominion and dethrone it as the king of all deck builders. But for me, it's never really going to be replaced because of its elegance. Every game of Dominion is played with the ABC system. That's action, buy, cleanup. There's a simplicity of rules there that is very easy to explain, although the game takes a lot of time to master. Because of the ABC system, every game will be able to be seamlessly transitioned from one to another. All you have to do is change the cards, and the rules of the game are completely the same. So what can we recommend based on these settings of Dominion? Let's take a look. The first game I would recommend after playing Dominion, unsurprisingly, is still Dominion. Specifically, my favorite expansion of the group, Dominion Prosperity. I like this expansion so much that I've often thought about taking the base cards, the coppers, the silvers, the golds, etc., out of the base game and putting them in the Prosperity box and just bringing that to teach the game. That's how seamlessly it fits into the game for me. It uses the same ABC system as the rest of Dominion, but adds some very interesting cards that extend the gameplay and make you think very carefully. As you know, there are two ways to end the game of Dominion. Either each stack, 3 stacks are going to be depleted, or the stack of provinces is going to be depleted. Dominion adds a third way, the idea of the colony card, which is like a province, only more expensive and more valuable, and it's really easy to remember that that card would also end the game immediately. But you could also end the game by purchasing any 3 stacks, and there are cards that get stronger, like City, based on how those stacks are depleted, and that completely changes the aspect of the game. Whether it's big money or big actions, Dominion Prosperity has cards that you're going to enjoy, so let's take a closer look at some of those cards.
Dominion Prosperity uses the exact same ABC structure from the base game, but adds more cards. Some cards provide victory point tokens, which score points but are not part of your deck. The Prosperity expansion introduces 2 new stacks, the Platinum and the Colony cards. Platinum cards cost 9 coins, but are worth 5 coins when played. Colony cards cost 11 coins, but are worth 10 victory points. The game will also end when the Colony stack is depleted. Prosperity offers many interesting cards that feature higher costs. The expansion furthers both heavy action and money-heavy strategies, and greatly enhances the scope of the game while only adding trivial rule alterations.
Dominion Prosperity adds so much to the game, but the great thing about it is that there's no one card that is an automatic buy, because you need to see how the card fits in the rest of the set. City is one of my favorite cards of all time, yet sometimes I can get distracted by the city, and the game ends because no one ever purchases any of the stacks. The provinces or the colonies are just depleted. So you have to think very carefully, and it fits so seamlessly into the rest of the game. Peddler, Workers' Village, Grand Market, these are all great cards that would be in my top choice when I'm picking cards randomly, though I usually use the randomizer. You can use any one of the Dominion sets because they're all so seamlessly into the game, although Dark Ages is not my favorite, and Adventures and Empires, I'm not sure how I feel about them, although there are cards you can purchase and they'll fit in seamlessly. That's the great thing about Dominion. If you don't like a card, you don't have to throw away the entire expansion. You just don't have to use the card. There's still more than 20 others that you can choose from, and that's Dominion Prosperity's greatest strength. There are cards that I don't like, but overall, the set as a whole works really well for Dominion, so definitely give it a try. If you've already played Prosperity, I would recommend probably Seaside next, or Dominion Intrigue. I like how Seaside adds the duration cards that persist from turn to turn, and Intrigue really takes the idea of the card type in giving dual types. This is an action and it's a victory point. It's a victory point, but it's also a currency. There's a lot there as well, but Dominion Prosperity, still far and beyond, in my opinion, the best of the bunch. Dominion was made by Donald Vaccarino, and he won the Spiel des Jahres for it in 2009. He also made another game I really enjoy that also won the Spiel des Jahres, but it's one that not many people are a fan of, but they're wrong. And that's Kingdom Builder. If you like Dominion, I think you will like Kingdom Builder if you're willing to give it a chance. I know it's a very controversial game. Some people love it, some people despise it. But I think the game is actually extremely intellectually challenging. Particularly, like Dominion, it punishes you for making mistakes. It has definitely that Vaccarino feel where there's a lot to consider and there are a lot of components that you can slide into the game. There are 10 different victory point cards and you'll choose 3 of them, so you have to adapt from strategy to strategy. You could certainly see how that's from the designer of Dominion. There are also 4 special power cards that are in play on each game, and you choose from 8 of them. So that game-to-game variability, that definitely has the same feeling as the designer. Let's take a closer look.
Kingdom Builder is an area control game with modular scoring, setup, and powers. Each turn, players will be placing 3 settlements onto the board following 2 rules. First, these settlements must be played on the terrain type drawn at the beginning of the turn. Second, all settlements must be played next to an adjacent settlement if possible. While this can be very restrictive, the point of Kingdom Builder is to find ways to mitigate these rules. This is done by acquiring special powers. Each game features 4 special powers chosen from a set of 8. They are acquired when a settlement is placed next to one of these locations. These powers might allow settlements to be placed in new areas or moved to a new location. By using these powers, players can open new areas of the board or block their opponents from key areas. Each game of Kingdom Builder features 3 scoring cards chosen from a set of 10. Each card details how points will be accumulated during the game based on where a settlement is placed. Some cards require being next to a specific terrain type, such as water or mountains. Other cards require the player to build evenly across all areas or build in a specified pattern. Players will also score points for playing next to a castle location, which are used in every game. The game ends when a player has played all of their settlements, and the player with the most points wins.
If you have a chance, Kingdom Builder is available on iOS for $3, I believe. The game has a couple of bugs in it, and it could really use an undo button, but other than that, it remains a great introduction to this game, and I highly recommend that you give it a chance. For me, I played it over 600 times on my phone alone, and I haven't gotten tired of it because you have to think very carefully. What are the powers that are available? What are the victory conditions? Where is my starting move? It is entirely possible to lose this game because you chose a very bad starting location, and I love that. You have to think so careful about this game because your first move is everything. You want to position yourself in a way that says, okay, I can expand in the board as much as possible. I want to make sure that I am insulated from bad luck. If you like games that punish you for making a mistake, ones that you have to think very carefully every single turn and think several turns ahead, Kingdom Builder is definitely going to be for you, and you'll definitely feel like it was made from the designer of Dominion. So Dominion Prosperity was just an expansion to Dominion, and Kingdom Builder is not actually a deck builder. But what about a deck builder recommendation that isn't Dominion? Well, they fall into 2 types, the stack style that Dominion featured, and the Ascension style that has a lineup. I'm not as big of a fan of the lineup games as I am the stack base, So for that, my recommendation would be Eminent Domain, a game that doesn't actually get as much attention as it probably deserves. Eminent Domain has stacks like Dominion. However, the stacks are always the same. There's not a lot of modularity in the base game, but that's okay because the game actually determines what you're going to do. Eminent Domain for me is Race for the Galaxy, the deck builder, and I actually say that in a very high compliment. Let's take a look.
In Eminent Domain, each player has an identical starting deck of cards and one starting location. Most cards will have an action ability and a roll ability. On a player's turn, they select one card from their hand and apply its action ability. This is optional. Then, they select one roll card from the central stacks and use its roll ability, adding any supplementary cards from their hand to boost the effectiveness of that roll. There is also a leader bonus for choosing this roll. After the current player is finished, each player in clockwise order can either follow the roll phase without the leader bonus or draw one card to descent. Thus, all players may take a weaker form of that roll on every turn. After all players complete the roll phase, the active player enters the cleanup phase. Any cards acquired, including the previous roll card, go into the discard pile. Players may then discard other cards in their hand if they are unwanted. Then, the current player draws up to their hand limit. Survey cards allow players to draw cards or explore planets to eventually settle. Each planet has a warfare and colonize cost as a means of settling it. It may also have a spot to produce a resource. Planets are also worth points at the end of the game. Warfare lets player collect fighters or attack a planet to settle it. Colonize lets players add colony cards under a planet or settle it. Produce and trade let you either produce resources on planets with open spots or trade those resources for points. Research lets you remove cards from your hand or acquire technology cards with advanced powers. Players must be able to meet the technology cost in research symbols and settled worlds. Each technology card is also worth points at the end of the game. The game ends when a certain number of stacks are depleted. The player with the most points wins.
The one thing I missed about Eminent Domain was that I really hoped the starting world lent more direction to your initial strategy. This is actually something they fixed with the Escalation expansion, but I don't want to recommend the expansion yet because you haven't played the base game. With the base game, the technologies make all the difference in the world. They are really going to drive what you are going to do, and it's very difficult to get that first technology. So you have to think very carefully in Eminent Domain, because what you do can actually be much better for your opponent than it is for yourself. So thinking turn to turn is very important. It also matters the order in which your cards came out, so you have to insulate against them. Are you going to be doing colonize, then surveying? That's not as effective as surveying and then colonizing. So Eminent Domain has a lot to think about. It's actually going to be a little bit heavier than Dominion is, and for that I can't recommend it as much, but it's certainly an interesting game to try out. Eminent Domain. As I said before, I love Dominion. It's my favorite game, and I would play it over and over again if I could, even if it was the only game I played for the rest of my life. But that's not how gaming should be. It's meant to be explored and expanded upon, and I think these games are a great reflection of that mentality. Kingdom Builder definitely feels like a Donald Vaccarino game. It has so much variability, I'll never get tired of it, and there are many things to consider, particularly from start to finish, like with Dominion. Dominion Prosperity, my favorite expansion of all time, really takes the core concept of Dominion and brings it to the next level and then some. It's something that I would actually consider teaching the base game with the Prosperity cards because you really can't tell much of a difference. And Eminent Domain really takes the stack-based system and makes you think very carefully about what you're putting into your deck because it's so difficult to remove it once it's actually in there. You have to think very carefully about what you're doing. You don't want to make it too strong for your opponent. These are all great games. I highly recommend them, but I also highly recommend Dominion. So which are you going to choose? I'm the Board Game Bandit, and this was Next Step Gaming. We'll see you next time.